Guys, let me know. Does the audio work now? I think I've accidentally tapped the mute button. Even though I tested it out right before, I tapped it while moving it around. It takes me 2 days to get used to new technology always. I'll edit the video afterwards, or I'll delete it or whatever. But like, thank you guys for letting me know. So I think I should probably start again then, right? So. Glad to hear that. Yeah, so basically, I've talked about now about how Apple plans AI-based Siri overhaul. I've said that Siri already supports like interacting with apps and stuff like that through very basic APIs. So Siri can handle stuff like notifications, controlling like music apps and things like that. So this is definitely where we are like looking into like an evolution, but it's such a big evolution that it's basically incomparable to what we've had before. So this will be an overhaul of Siri. So, but we do basically also have some contradictory rumors on when exactly certain parts of like the new Siri features will roll out. So yeah, some is supposed to come right away with like iOS 18 in September, and then some of it is supposed to come out throughout 2025. This is, by the way, why I've said in previous videos that it's my full belief that we won't know Apple's like full AI push before basically like 2 years, right? So next year's WWDC, and then the year after, I believe that over time, this is when we'll finally understand how much does Apple want to make run on device, how much does Apple want to have run in the cloud, who does Apple cooperate with, does Apple eventually want to give up on those cooperations and make it only run on basically Apple internal stuff. So yeah, there's a lot to come, and as I said, when people still couldn't hear me, that Mark Gurman definitely is a believable source in many, many ways. And he also happens to like, well, we all happen to be very close to Dub. So at this point, I am inclined to believe what he is saying. Apple will be using large language models. I've said before, obviously, that this is going to happen. There's no basically predicting here. This is a given, given where technology stands when it comes to AI. What is interesting is we still don't fully understand how much of that will be handled by like OpenAI or Google. Supposedly, the stuff that will run on device will be handled definitely by Apple's large language models or like smaller language models. And then on the cloud, we are supposedly getting a mix of like M2 Ultra and M4 generation processors, and devices will have like a way to tell which task to hand over to the cloud and which task to make run on device. Supposedly that will be handled by like the secure enclave on Apple's A series processors. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that will be somewhat unique to Apple. As I said before, people are kind of like shitting on privacy in regards to like AI. Primarily because I believe the companies that are currently handling AI have always shit on privacy, like Google, Microsoft, Meta. Those companies never cared that much about AI. So when people are saying, well, AI is a problem because it's run on the cloud and there's no privacy in the cloud, that is not true. You can have privacy in the cloud. You can have maybe more security issues on the cloud. But overall, if Apple like implements hard policies to protect your data in the cloud, then Apple will stick to that. That's kind of their MO. They won't damage their brand by suddenly changing everything they're about. So yeah, definitely like a lot of interesting like conundrums here between like a push for security and privacy, a lot of functionality, basically a dialectical conflict between on-device processing and cloud functionality. So, but Apple is definitely leveraging as much as they possibly can right now, and this is how we are getting more and more leaks of more and more features. The upgrade is one piece of the company's larger AI strategy, which will be unveiled at DubDub conference on June 10th. Apple is preparing several features, including voice memo transcriptions and summaries, quick recaps of websites and notifications, automated message replies, advanced photo editing, and AI-generated emojis. I've already covered all of these features. They sound pretty interesting, and some of them are actually like getting further expanded upon through different journalists and things like that. So that's definitely a pretty interesting. And some of the more fun stuff like AI-generated emojis, I've talked about it, that this is basically perfect for generative AI because it's a very simplistic like thing. Apple has a lot of great expertise in making emojis. So if they feed like an AI algorithm, an LLM, a lot of data on how they design emojis and stuff, we might get super fun stuff where you just type something and then basically the system suggests you an AI generated emoji. As part of the rollout, more basic AI tasks will be processed on the device themselves, while more advanced capabilities will be handled via cloud compute. The company also has been forging a deal with OpenAI to integrate the startup's chatbot and other tech into the iOS Guys, you don't call it the iOS OS. It's iOS stands for iPhone operating system. Yeah, you just say into iOS. And it remains in talks with Google parent Alphabet. Just say Google. Like, this makes language so complicated. To use its Gemini software in the future, which is interesting because it's really hard to predict, like, how, for one, Gemini seems to really not be that good in certain tasks. Ironically, in the conversational aspect, it seems to be kind of the worst, which is shocking to see given just how far ahead Google Assistant was of Siri and other stuff in the industry. But also Google Gemini was like marketed as being super cheap. Like at Google I/O, the latest version of Google Gemini. Now the pricing has gone up by 2x or something like that, probably because Google completely overestimated their ability to like use scale and stuff to bring costs down. AI is expensive. You need like latest gen GPUs to actually like be somewhat efficient with it. No matter how efficient you are, you will still need gigantic server farms that eat up a lot of energy. So yeah, Apple will probably get a killer deal because just having guaranteed business is always good. In fact, it's kind of being written that Microsoft might be worrying about like if Apple gets like very deep into a relationship with OpenAI. And Apple does have advantages that will speak to OpenAI. Don't forget that OpenAI by itself is also trying to be like not your traditional private company. So working with Apple that respects privacy and security at least a little more than Microsoft might be more enticing to the people there. And we can argue about like, well, Apple won't build them like the kind of server farms or so that Microsoft can. OpenAI at this point can like collect whatever money they want. They have like really good LLMs. They have a lot of brand recognition throughout the world, so I wouldn't really worry about like their ability to expand their own business. And when it comes to Microsoft itself, Microsoft still does try to compete in a way with OpenAI. Just because they build their features on top of their technology doesn't mean that OpenAI doesn't like having like their own GPT app on other systems. We have seen that how they targeted specifically Macs with a native nice, efficient application right away. There was none for Windows, and the reason for that was probably because they thought, well, Microsoft is already integrating all that Copilot crap directly into Windows, so why should we build our own app if like the platform holder will build an app that is built on our functionality? So in my opinion, OpenAI can really probably get to like Apple in surprising ways. Google probably already is like salivating at the thought of getting any AI business from Apple, because Google also knows just how worthwhile like their search business has been with Apple, like their agreement. I don't even know if it's like a full revenue share agreement or if it's just constantly getting renegotiated. But Google is paying Apple a ton of money to stay the default search engine on iOS. And you have to imagine, like, Google's standing maybe 5 years ago was like, well, why would you pay money to anyone to be the default search engine? You're the default search engine for basically the entire planet. But now we see that, yeah, sure, Google absolutely holds basically a monopoly over the search engine business right now. But if it keeps falling further behind when it comes to AI tech, and other companies have now so much cloud infrastructure because they have invested into AI, like there could be legitimate competition to Google, even if it's just a way better Bing, right? And once you like cross a certain threshold, like maybe Bing goes over 20% market share, well, then the dominoes sort of start to fall. Now investors will start doubting Google even more than they already do, like their AI stuff. And while Google has done well for themselves on the stock market, they have let people go, so they increase their profit margins, things like that. They definitely couldn't be asking probably even half the price that OpenAI could be demanding right now. However, if they get a good deal from Apple, like a decent deal for themselves and a good deal for Apple, and then in 2 years' time they drastically improve their AI and it's time for renegotiations, then Apple will definitely pay up more. Apple software boss Craig Federighi has told his teams to develop as many new AI features as possible for this year's operating system updates. That makes absolutely sense to me. I really do like that there is a focus on developing like AI features and not just further improving on LLMs. Because, yeah, I know that chatbots can, in theory, do a lot, right? They can code for you, they can analyze data for you, but it has to be integrated into the OS specifically. Especially if you want anything that runs locally, it has to be small, it has to be efficient, it has to be fast, and therefore it needs to be optimized for the actual OS, for the actual application, stuff like that. You cannot just say, well, throw a random chatbot at it and it will somehow do it after like 5 minutes of communication with the cloud. It's not really how you would want to experience AI on iOS. Siri will be a key focus of the WWDC unveiling. This is interesting because this has been like up and down so much, where people are saying, well, Apple will not have like an AI chatbot, but Siri will be way smarter to the point where it's almost a chatbot. It just will like refuse to give you like the kind of Gen AI answers that like ChatGPT 4.0 will do, right? Siri will not like magically code for you, but maybe like Siri will just tell you, well, how about you go to a Mac and ask me on Xcode, right? And then I can code for you, right? While this to me is already anyway far more enticing, because I do like things that have a definitive user interface, that are well integrated, so that appeals to me way more. The new system. Hey Siri, stop. I guess Siri thought I was talking to it, my HomePod. The new system will allow the assistant to control and navigate an iPhone or iPad with more precision. That includes being able to open individual documents, moving a note to another folder, sending or deleting an email, opening a particular publication in Apple News, emailing a web link, or even asking the device for a summary of an article. Now, for one, as you can see, a lot of it is based on like in operating system stuff. I wouldn't even say like in app stuff. Some of that does app stuff, but I assume if you ask Siri from wherever you are, it will still be able to access files. It will be able to access Apple News app. Obviously, if you're inside Safari and you'll just tell Siri to analyze like an article, it will know that you mean Safari. Emailing, yeah, definitely. I would even say like emailing a web link is definitely something that I believe Siri right now would be capable of. Like if I open a website now and I say like share this, I know it worked a while ago. They had like a feature where you could like tell Siri, remind me of this, and then it would do stuff, but I don't remember if they ever got rid of that feature. It was years ago that they talked about it, dubbed up or something like that. But there is some smaller stuff here that is definitely interesting because it suggests that the app itself definitely has been written for it, right? Open individual documents, moving a note to another folder, right? Those are all like features that definitely would scream, oh, it's well integrated into the file system of the actual operating system. Oh, it communicates well with the Files app, or maybe at this point Apple will just turn it into Finder for the most part. So that's kind of interesting to me, at least. So definitely a lot of like features that are baked into individual apps. Today, Siri is limited mostly to broader commands like playing music playlists, looking up information, or controlling smart home appliances. The company also offers what are known as app intents to developers, allowing them to craft ways for Siri to tap individual features. In 2018, Apple launched Siri shortcuts as well, letting users manually create commands for app features. It will be interesting if they will like allow you to create maybe shortcuts like through Siri, because I believe that as great as the Shortcuts app is, its user interface is a little cluttered and it can be confusing for like non-newcomers. So in my opinion, it definitely would make at least some sense to give Siri command over that. The new system will go further, using AI to analyze what people are doing on their devices and automatically enable Siri-controlled features. It will be limited to Apple's own apps at the beginning. I don't know if that means Apple will have like APIs right away for other developers, but obviously they will take some time to implement it. Or if Apple does not plan on bringing out new like AI specific APIs for maybe like the first year or so of the new AI features. Maybe Apple just sees so much potential for AI just screwing up at the beginning. Maybe they see problems with how that will work for server stuff. So yeah, maybe in the beginning it will be just a year of Apple exclusivity. I wouldn't bet on it. Apple has been more aggressive in recent years in bringing features right away that have like APIs that work for third-party developers, but maybe those APIs will be like less feature rich than they currently are for Apple's own apps. And the company plans on supporting hundreds of different commands. So this is definitely very, very encouraging. I hope they will also have some kind of user interface where you basically can tell what exactly you can do or not. That will be pretty exciting to me, because I like knowing what is exactly validated on the system, so that I will obviously play around with that feature up and down and throughout the OS, but I would definitely love to see how it works by default, right? What Apple believes are like the best features there, what have they optimized the most for, things like that. The feature is one of Apple's more complex AI initiatives and isn't planned for release until as soon as next year. This is interesting because this is always the stuff with Mark Gurman. For one, I would have put that in the beginning of the article, but also like. Because he's like saying, oh, Siri will get like all those features as soon as next year. Does that mean Siri gets no features until next year, right? Or does it mean that Siri gets some features right now and then the more ambitious ones come next year, right? You see where it gets confusing, and I doubt that Mark Gurman actually knows himself. This is Probably hard to tell, but he is saying that basically those new advanced features will be part of a subsequent iOS 18 update. So at least we won't have to wait until iOS 19 for it, according to the people. So it's also, by the way, this could make it subject to change, right? It could mean Apple is targeting like a November to February release for that feature. Apple could be like super ambitious and still bring it out in iOS 18. So according to the people and the way he words it, it just sounds not quite sure. The first version of the new OS will launch in September around the same time as the next iPhone models. Nothing surprising there. That's how new iOS versions have behaved in terms of release for years. At the start, the new Siri will handle one command at a time, with Apple's plans to allow users to chain commands together. This is okay. I'm not a big chain commander guy in that regard, but what about like simple follow-ups, right? If you do like a basic web search on a person, right, and then you have like a follow-up, like about like maybe you asked about the person's age first and then you asked about how tall they are. Will Siri have issues with that? I understand that maybe like chaining OS commands will be difficult, but what about like stuff that works in the cloud? Is there a noticeable difference there? For example, they could ask Siri to summarize a recorded meeting and then text it to a colleague in one request. Wait, so chain command means more than one command in one? But I would still be able to tell Siri, like, summarize that recorded meeting and then I could make it send it? Because that to me is as good as anything else. I would still probably prefer to even quickly look at the summary before I send it off. I don't trust chained commands in that regard. That to me doesn't sound bad at all. By the way, guys, we've now been streaming for a little bit. I want to remind you, please, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe, please like, please share, please comment. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with, what you think of what exactly we are getting, how sure you are, or what Mark Gurman is sharing, what you would like to see, maybe stuff that hasn't been rumored but really like would make your day if you saw that introduced at DubDub. And of course, if you feel like supporting this channel directly, if you feel like me getting technology that I'm obviously too stupid to interact with, and I mute myself for like the first 15 minutes of a video, please consider leaving a super chat or a super sticker. It helps out tremendously. It's way bigger than like ad view revenue whenever it comes in. And if you want to support this channel directly in the long term, you can subscribe to my Patreon. Link is in the description below. Or an iPhone could theoretically be asked to crop a picture and then email it to a friend. I have no idea who emails photos anymore, but I guess you could say you could crop. By the way, this is also like where I genuinely am not a huge fan of like having AI do all stuff, because if you say it crop a picture, like where exactly should the crop end? Like should you say like, oh, crop out the person, right? But there's still like artistic intent. Whenever I crop out stuff, I don't want it to be like pixel by pixel level, and unless it's something I do for a thumbnail. But yeah, and obviously I wouldn't then email it to a friend. I would iMessage it or something like that. A major component of the new push is a system that will use AI to automatically determine if a function should be handled on device or via cloud. That has raised some privacy questions. No, actually it doesn't. Like a big part of it definitely sounds to me like Apple is already building that about privacy. With privacy in mind. So I have no idea in which way it raises privacy questions. If it might raise like some questions about what specifically you are doing, but if anything, it sounds like the first like AI that actually cares in a major way about privacy. While on-device tasks won't share personal information, the cloud-based approach will require some user data to be transferred to remote servers. Yes, this is always the case. Of course you need that. And I've said time and time again that I am not against having like cloud and whatever having access to some of my data that it actually needs to get a certain task done. What I'm against when it comes to privacy is egregious data collection that often happens without like the person's knowing, right? uh, uh, and it like works throughout every third party app. It creates like a dossier about you and stuff like that. This is what I'm against when it comes to the word of privacy. What I'm not against is like basically an exchange of information. Like, look, you need that info now to do the task I wanted you to do. So here is the data. Especially if you ask me for that data, right? And you tell me, well, could we have access to your contacts? Could we have access to like your like photos and whatever? And especially if you like for AI, I would assume they would ask you, can we keep a profile on you? Some features will be enhanced by it. We promise to not sell your data. Um, but you can turn it off and still get access to our slightly more basic functionality, or at least functionality that is less personalized. That to me would be perfect. I do not expect like AI to be as good as it can be without feeding it with more data. That's just not how technology works. That's not how algorithms work. That's not how like large language models work. That's not how like today's operating systems work. Yeah, so I don't have that many privacy questions, to be honest. The info will be protected by the so-called secure enclave in the high-end Apple Max chips powering data centers, Bloomberg reported earlier this month. Right, this was what I was talking about, right? That supposedly there would be like a mix of M2 Ultra and M4 processors. Again, no idea what exactly that means when it comes to M4. Will we have like M4, M4 Pro, M4 Max based servers? Will we have M4 Ultra based servers? Like, I assume eventually, yes, definitely. But will we have some already this year? I don't know. This is where Mark Gurman always hedges his bets. I think even when he sometimes thinks he knows stuff like that, he doesn't really confirm it. The only thing he stands really hard by is usually his hardware predictions. And that this is why he more often fails in those than like his predictions about Apple's broader business or software, where he usually talks a little more softly. Apple will attempt to further reassure customers that their data is private by creating an intelligence report that explains how the information is secured. The iPhone maker also won't build profiles of customer, something it's criticized Google and Meta platforms for doing. We've talked about that already in the prior report. With the Siri upgrade, Apple is looking to reinvigorate a pioneering product that fell behind competitor services. The company first launched Siri in 2011, giving it a head start in voice-based interfaces and AI. But Apple soon lost it, lead to Amazon Inc.'s Alexa. By the way, does anybody know, like, is Amazon doing much with large language models these days? Will we get like an LLM-powered Alexa? Or does that simply not make sense for them, given how, like, basically Alexa for 90% of people is just about like interacting with like Spotify or whatever. So I don't know. Does it really make sense for them to try to create like their own Chat GPT or Google Gemini competitor? And they lost the lead to Google Assistant, which I would agree more with than Amazon's Alexa. Then it was caught flat-footed again when generative AI chatbots emerged 2 years ago. Apple also is contending with a sales slowdown, and its shares have underperformed those of its peers this year. This primarily comes from AI with Microsoft. Google didn't even succeed in terms of its stock that much because of AI. As I said, they have found ways to improve their profit margins a little bit. Microsoft is just riding the high of never-ending Azure growth, seemingly, though it is slowing down somewhat. Let's see how that is sustainable for the next couple of years. And Apple, unlike the other companies, basically had no mass layoffs whatsoever. They had like smaller layoffs, basically of groups that they were kind of done with, which does make sense. Some projects get canceled, some projects simply end. But yeah, Apple did not let go of enough people to dramatically improve their profit margin. The stock is down about 1% in 2024, compared with a 10% gain for the tech-heavy Nasdaq. A lot of it comes from one company, though. A lot of it comes from Nvidia, which has like gone up by 2x or something just this year, maybe more at this point. So yeah, and it's now $2.5 trillion in market cap. So I wouldn't believe that Nasdaq by itself is like so much healthier than Apple. It's primarily one outlier, and other companies that are doing like AI chips and stuff like that. Apple was up 0.5% to $191.29 on the New York Stock Exchange on Thursday. Apple is betting that the new AI features for iPhone, iPad, and Mac, as well as the Siri enhancements, will encourage users to upgrade their devices. This is where we sort of come to a new piece of info that is not surprising at all, where Mark Gurman says that many of the on-device AI capabilities will require an iPhone 15 Pro or later to work. Macs and iPads, meanwhile, will need at least an M1 chip. This, in fact, makes a lot of sense to me. Now, I would believe that there will probably be some exclusive features the more you go up the generational rank. However, M1 chips are not just M1 chips, right? M1 chips are also M1 Pro chips, M1 Max chips, M1 Ultra chips. The same goes for the M2 generation, and obviously M4 Gen will also grow in size. So those devices, they don't just have a capable neural engine, but they also have more CPU cores than in A series processors. They have way more wattage to work with. They have larger memory bandwidth, and they have much larger GPUs. From what I understand, the A17 Pro, like in combined neural network like capability, probably is just about on the level of an M1. It's hard to calculate that stuff. It will be interesting if there will be more benchmarks popping up and stuff like that. But yeah, this definitely makes a lot of sense to me. And I know some people always try to reduce AI functionality to like the neural engine, and this is why some people are saying, well, the Snapdragon X Elite is like will beat the M4 chip in AI tasks. And it's like, yeah, maybe if you stupidly only isolate for the neural engine, but given that Apple has had like good machine learning accelerators on the CPU for literally years and years, given that Apple has a more powerful GPU, not only is the M4's GPU more powerful than the one on the Snapdragon X Elite, and even like the 10-core GPU of the M2 is faster than the one on the X Elite. But Apple also, of course, has like their M3 Pro, M3 Max chips, even like M2 Ultra. Of course, those devices will be able to calculate AI even faster than like the fastest neural engine that Apple has. The neural engine is a relatively small part of the SoC. I'm not even sure if it has like full access to like all the bandwidth that the SoC can access. Usually the bandwidth stuff is more like attributed to the GPU. The CPU, for example, on Apple's for example M series chips, that does definitely not have full access to all the bandwidth, but that is also not much of a loss because it doesn't need it. It has like 2/3 of the theoretical maximal bandwidth or something like that of the GPU, and it also changes a little bit from gen to gen, and also in relation to the chip size and stuff like that. So there might be like different bandwidth percentage capabilities from CPU to GPU if you're looking at an ultra chip versus looking at a base M series processor. But yeah, this to me makes a lot of sense. It also I would say it also probably comes down a little bit to memory. Apple is doing wonders when it comes to 8 gigs of memory devices, but Apple is definitely now at their limit with getting much else out of like 6 gig of RAM devices. They probably could get some on-device stuff to run there, but then it would probably also eat very much into the available memory for other tasks. So iPhone 15 Pro with the A17 Pro chip with 8 gigs of memory, and then the A18 chip, which will likely have faster memory, and then will be also on the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro. Those will like suffice, and then the year after on the iPhone 17 Pro generation, Apple is supposedly upgrading to 12 gigs of memory on the iPhone. We've already seen that maybe the M4 iPad Pro in its base configuration actually has 12 gigs of memory and not 8, but Apple maybe uses like binned memory modules, or maybe they just chose to deactivate some of it in order to upsell people more on the 16 gigs versions. But it definitely seems like M4 Max will also like start with 12 gigs of memory. So maybe Apple at that point will like not make a difference between like M1, M1 Pro, M1 Max or whatever. They will just say, okay, this new feature works with M4 and up, this one feature works with M2 and up, and stuff like that. And then it just runs noticeably faster on the Max chips and stuff like that than on the base level version. So that's basically what Mark Gurman had to write. It's not super specific because obviously this is like a larger initiative where he says like there will be hundreds of different commands, and those commands will like interact with like from basic Siri web stuff to send links and do article summaries to working with the Files app to of course give commands over even stuff like photo editing and things like that. So definitely a lot to look forward to. I wonder how much of it they will show, and I'm almost inclined to believe that they will. This is why I'm saying keep an eye for Apple's keep an eye on, not AI, keep an eye on Apple's AI efforts over the next 2 years, because I think they will keep gradually not just rolling out new features, but also just showing them off on stage, right? This is where I kind of believe where their magic will sort of come from, where they will have actually a very, very informed user base on what is capable, what their iPhones are capable of, right? It's sort of when that feature came out where the iPhone started recognizing text on images and was able to copy and paste it, translate it, things like that. Google has had versions of that with Google Lens for quite a while, but people didn't really know how to use it. It wasn't as well implemented in like the native photo camera app in Android, and so Apple's feature, because it was shown at WWDC, because it became a little bit of a meme online, people started to learn about it. And then Android people came out the woodworks and said like, we had it first. And it's like, yeah, fine. Nobody's denying that. I had it first too, because Google Lens worked on iPhones marvelously. But obviously the main difference is here, this feature was like well implemented right into the OS. It worked really well offline. One of the many features, AI adjacent features that already run pretty well on Apple when it comes to offline functionality. So I believe that this will be a big portion of the strength that Apple's AI efforts will show. And next, we do have another article about iOS 18 AI capabilities, further expanding upon Project Graymatter, which I've said also in my last stream is a great name, I think, for like an AI feature. This is from Apple Insider. They do have stuff about summarizing notifications, articles, and much more. It should be noted that a lot of that has been already like talked about in some way, shape, or form, but now we're expanding on it. So Apple's next-gen OS will feature Project Graymatter, bringing a multitude of AI-related enhancements. We have new details of AI features planned for Siri, Notes, and Messages. Following widespread claims and reports about AI-related enhancements in iOS 18, Apple Insider has received additional info about Apple's plans in the area of AI. People familiar with the matter have revealed that the company is internally testing a variety of new AI-related features ahead of its WWDC. Known under Project Graymatter, the company's AI improvements will focus on practical benefits for the end user. This is something that I've tried to highlight. I don't know how often at this point, that Apple is actually doing stuff where you don't go to a chatbot and then hope that the chatbot can do the specific things you want. And I have seen chatbots be like super, super sure of themselves and then produce garbage basically. Like I asked Microsoft Copilot to create like a graph for me that showed like the market share between Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. And it did that, and it even had like numbers for every year. But then I went into the Python code that was underlying for this graph, and it said to me that the graph is based on like general trends and not real data. That is fine for a super like low level overview, or is it high level overview? I always forget which one it is. But it's like if I wanted a graph that I wanted to like very quickly put into like a PowerPoint presentation, something like that, I would want it to be based on real data. That real data exists. There are sites like Open Statista or something like that, and I have no idea why it just didn't use data that was definitely available. And to me, having an OS that directly like was coded for AI rather than a chatbot that was coded on top of an operating system, to me makes way, way more sense and will deliver way more practical benefits, especially if it's created by the developers who are not like only AI developers, and I'm not saying that in like a disparaging way, but like they're developers of an actual operating system, of productivity apps, of creativity apps. So this idea that like yes, AI can do a lot, but it has to be used like a tool, and it has to be used like a specific tool. It cannot just be a hammer that sees every problem as a nail. It has to be more specific than that. In pre-release versions of Apple's OS, the company has been working on a notification summarization feature known as Graymatter Catch-up. So I assume there is a chance that it will just be called Catch-up once it's in the OS. So though Apple might want to avoid calling anything Catch-up in the AI race, because people will then make jokes, oh my god, Apple is doing catch-up with everybody else. The feature is tied to Siri, meaning that users will be able to request and receive an overview of their recent notifications through the virtual assistant. I wonder how much of that functionality, though, will be built into like the general user interface of the operating system, right? If you think of like clicking on the share button, for example, on iOS, you will see that it does a lot more than sharing, right? It gives you like translation tools and stuff like that. You can bookmark stuff, whatever. And I wonder if they will just integrate a lot more stuff now in that, at this point now, endless share sheet. Siri is expected to receive significantly updated response generation capabilities through a new smart response framework, as well as Apple's on-device LLM. So this came out the same day as Mark Gurman's report. This is basically confirming what like each one is saying. I don't know which one came out exactly before the other in terms of hours, but this now sounds to me incredibly realistic. This idea that many reputable sources are now saying the same things sounds really good to me. When generating replies and summaries, Siri will be able to take into account entities such as people and companies, calendar events, location dates, and much more. So basically, Siri will have a much better contextual understanding of your data, which is why privacy will be sort of key, and then it will provide output based on that. And this is where Google is the only company that can match that in a relevant way. Yes, Microsoft is the Windows company, and that can help, but the way, like most people will probably deactivate all that AI crap on Windows. Windows bros just aren't into Microsoft features. But when it comes to like deep system integration, you would want the platform holder to do that. And obviously Google has a platform, and Google has their AI, and now Apple will do their stuff. and it remains to be just seen who does it better. In our earlier reports on Safari 18, the Ajax LLM, and updated voice memos app, Apple Insider revealed that Apple plans to introduce AI powered text summarization and transcription to its built in applications. We have since learned that the company intends to bring these features to Siri as well. This ultimately means Siri will be able to answer queries on device, create summaries of lengthy articles, or transcribe audio as in the updated notes or voice memo application. That to me just means that Siri will have a really good understanding of the capabilities of individual apps, right? It does not sound like Siri has anything like extra almost. I would believe that like notes and voice memos at this point probably will have like a plus button, and or in voice memos it will just be like a dot dot dot, and it will give you the option to transcribe the added voice memo, and on notes, if you either like ingest a voice memo like from the voice memos app, it will give you the same kind of like ability. Or maybe you have like a plus add or add button that says, oh, add a voice memo, and maybe automatically transcribe it. It does not sound like this is actually like Siri specific stuff where you need to ask Siri. This would all be done through the use of the Ajax LLM or cloud-based processing for more complex tasks. This is interesting because this is one task, so they don't know which tasks are on device or not. My expectation for stuff like transcribing audio is that it will run on device. I just don't see the complexity underlying it that would result in it having to run on cloud, though I could see Apple maybe handing off that stuff to cloud if there's any issue in recognizing the voice more exactly, right? Maybe there's like a bad audio quality or something like that. I don't know. We were also told Apple has been testing enhanced and more natural voices, along with text-to-speech improvements, which should ultimately result in a significantly better user experience. Okay, there isn't that much to comment here. Apple has also been working on cross-device media and TV controls for Siri. So basically, Siri would understand their apps way better, as I said time and time again now. But now that apparently includes like their like remote app, and maybe it has like handover. What is that called? Handover? No. What is that feature called? When you like iOS, was it called handover? It's called handoff. Yeah, this is when you like move a task basically from one device to the next. Maybe Siri, in that regard, will be able to do that somewhat by itself. The feature would allow someone to, for instance, use Siri in their Apple Watch to play music on another device, though the feature is not expected until later in 2024. I would say there's a good chance that the base iOS 18 version has like a big AI package. Then there is another one in like November or something like that. Maybe Apple once again like delays like macOS by a month, and by the time like the first new version of macOS comes out, iOS 18.1 comes out, and then we have like a new rollout of features. And then I would expect a new batch to launch early 2025, and then maybe one in like April, May, right before WWDC, and then we get like a new wave, but have to wait for that until September. The company has decided to embed our AI into several of its core system applications, with different use cases and tasks in mind. One notable area of improvement has to do with photo editing. Apple has developed generative AI software for improved image editing. iOS 18 and macOS 15 are expected to bring AI-powered photo editing options to apps such as Photos. Internally, Apple has developed a new cleanup feature that is very exciting because this is something that Google already offers, and having that run on device and stuff like that will definitely be very useful, which will allow users to remove objects from images through the use of generative AI software. Now, obviously, you can see this already, this is the Photos app, but it does work on stuff like Pixelmator app and stuff, and obviously Photoshop, and then Google has like their stuff. to do the same thing, but it's definitely going to be great to have that right in the app. Also related to Project Graymatter, the company has created an internal use application known under the name Generative Playground. People familiar with the app revealed exclusively to Apple Insider that it can utilize Apple's generative AI software to create and edit images, and then it features iMessage integration in the form of a dedicated app extension. So this is, we don't know what that means in terms of like, will Apple actually launch it? Is it just something they're playing around with? Because this is the kind of stuff, this is definitely not running on device. This is definitely a cloud feature. It is pretty compute extensive, so Apple would have to invest a nice sum of money into making it run well. And then there is this stuff with all the problems with generated images, right? The rights of artists who created stuff that then ultimately was fed to create those AI creations. Adult material and stuff like that, fake news stuff, all those things to consider, all that stuff that makes, for example, Google's image creation tool so restrictive, often just telling you, oh, I cannot comply with that request. And it featuring iMessage integration. I assume there will be like a lot of stuff that will be like well integrated, in the sense that how like the generative emoji will probably be very easy to access just from the regular mode emoji stuff on the keyboard. I assume that once Apple has things like that, maybe they become like an iMessage app separately. Maybe you have to ask Siri. I don't know, but here it seems to be for now well integrated. In Apple's test environments, it's possible to generate an image through AI and then send it off through iMessage. There are indications that the company has a similar feature planned for the end users of its OS. I don't know when it will come out though. Like, this definitely sounds more competitive to like solutions that we have from other companies, and like this is definitely like a very cloud first feature. At least I would be very surprised if it was running in any way on device, unless it's like for emojis. This information is aligned with another report claiming that users will be able to use AI to generate unique emojis, though there are additional possibilities for image generation features. According to people familiar with the matter, pre-release versions of Apple's Notes application contain references to a generation tool, though it is unclear if this tool will generate text or images, as is the case with the Generative Playground app. Wait, how long is this article? Oh, okay. So the relevant part basically is only until then. I didn't fully read it before that. My God. Um, so yeah, they definitely are going out of the way to be like very, very like respectable news source in that regard. Notes will receive AI-powered transcription summarization along with math notes. Even Rogers, hey, hey Mark, hey Evan, welcome to the stream, man. Apple has prepared significant enhancements for its built-in Notes application, set to make its debut with iOS 18 and macOS 15. The updated Notes will receive support for in-app audio recording, audio transcription, and LLM-powered summarization. Basically, a lot of what we've already talked about. Audio recordings, transcription, and text-based summaries will be available within OneNote, not Microsoft's OneNote, alongside any other material users choose to add. This means that a single note could, for instance, contain a recording for an entire lecture and meeting, complete with whiteboard pictures and text. These features would turn Notes into a true powerhouse, making it the go-to app for students and business professionals alike. Yes, but I would say it's already pretty good. But if Apple also adds like maybe different ways to sort notes, which for now is kind of a little bit of a shortcoming in my opinion, versus something like OneNote. But yeah, it remains to be seen. It definitely seems like there will be a lot of like app changes, right? Because I don't see Apple adding all of those features without at least to a degree adapting the user interface to just how many more input methods you now have. Um, Adding audio transcription and summarization features will also allow Apple's Notes application to better position itself against rival offerings such as Microsoft OneNote or Otter. I have actually no idea what Otter is. While support for audio recording at the application level, along with AI powered audio transcription and summarization tools, will all greatly improve the Notes app, they're not the only things Apple has been working on. There are also math notes, which I hope also means we get. Goes now into other rumors as well, because we are now rumored to be getting not just a calculator app on the iPad, but supposedly the calculator will be now much more capable across the systems, and this would line up with also capabilities that go into like math notes. It will receive an entirely new edition in the form of math notes, which will usher in support for proper mathematical notation and enable integration with Apple's new Graymatter calculator app. Apple has been working on the most significant update to its calculator app in years, and the version being tested in early betas of macOS 15 sports brand new features and exciting enhancements. Why are they writing such long articles? So, unit conversion, math notes, like like proper scientific graphs from what I understand. So it's a freaking long article. I don't want to I wanted to make this a 1 hour video, guys. um, keep it. So people will be able to keep track of their recent calculations that should have been part of the calculator app all along. There will be like a history tape from all 3 calculator views, which will include basic, scientific, and programmer. Evan Rogers is saying, doesn't everyone just use Siri for unit conversions anyway? Yeah, to a degree, but sometimes you might not even know like what to call a specific unit, right? You might also just want to play around with data. And of course, if you're just building like if you have like a specific task in mind and maybe it's like multi-step, then maybe it just makes more sense to have it right in the calculator app, right? We're not talking about like, translate 3 kilometers into miles or translate 50 euros into dollars. We're probably talking about much more complicated stuff. But yes, I would assume that also just as anything calculator stuff, right? If you type it into Spotlight search, you can basically then continue the task inside the calculator app, which with a history will also give you like a much nicer view, and it will allow you to work with old data and insert it into new functions. So maybe you needed to make like 5 conversions at that point and you needed to keep track of them, which obviously makes a lot more sense to do that in like a dedicated app than having to ask Siri or Spotlight search, copying the individual results, not forgetting which one was which. So it still makes sense, at least to me. The most striking change by far is the new design. With macOS 15, the calculator app should adopt a design reminiscent of its iOS counterpart, with rounded buttons and darker shades of black across the application, right? And this is also when we're supposedly getting an iPad app of a calculator finally, but supposedly now a really good one. We now have additional details as to what math notes will entail. People familiar with the new feature have revealed that math notes will allow the app to recognize text in the form of mathematical equations and offer solutions to them. Support for graphing expressions is also in the works. Again, so you can see a lot of stuff might actually like launch later than we might expect, meaning we could see something similar to the Grapher app on macOS, but within Notes. Apple's also working on input-focused enhancements related to mathematics in the form of a feature known as keyboard math predictions. Apple Insider was told that the feature would enable the completion of mathematical expressions whenever they're recognized as part of text input. This is AI stuff, basically understanding math problems, solving them for you, creating graphs from text. Now the later could work maybe from algorithm stuff, but I assume all of this will be powered by large language models. So that's great. Honestly, that's very ambitious, and if it creates a fantastic application, and you have to understand, a lot of people will now be able to say, well, I'm doing a lot of stuff on that calculator app, and that means that every other calculator app on the App Store or whatever would either have to offer you more features, so you actually pay money for it, or it would have to be like validated by by some kind of like educational body, which is usually why they cost so much money. But for most people, and especially if you like leave school and might not have access to any kind of license to like a real calculator anymore, this will do the trick for 95%, 99% of the people. Um, this means that within Notes, users would receive an option to autocomplete their mathematical equations in a similar way to how Apple currently offers predictive text or inline completion on iOS, which are also expected to make their way to visionOS later this year. Apple's visionOS will also see improved integrations with Apple's Transformer language model, the predictive text model, which offers suggestions as you type. I assume on Vision Pro, like the fact that you type really slowly, probably Apple thought that you didn't need quite the same Transformer LM. I'm not sure, because obviously you can connect like a Mac keyboard to it, but then Apple probably thinks, well, if you connect like a keyboard to it, now you can type very quickly, so any kind of prediction we might offer you might actually be overlooked, right? So yeah, but maybe now the slow typers will get much better predictions on Vision OS. The operating system is also expected to receive a redesigned voice commands UI, which serves as an indicator of just how much Apple values input-related enhancements. The company is also looking to improve user input through the use of so-called smart replies, which will be available in Messages, Mail, and Siri. Now, we have talked about that time and time again. This is basically a very, very basic stuff for large language models. I assume Apple would also like tune those smart replies based on the specific application and the person you are chatting with. So like an email to your boss might have a very distinctly different tone than a message to your loved ones. At least that is how I would expect it to work. This would allow users to reply to messages or emails with basic text-based response that generated instantly by Apple's on-device Ajax LLM. This is interesting. They basically go out of their way to say that this part, at the very least, will be on device. And then they go into other AI stuff, like which large language model they would use, other stuff that we've talked about on this channel that we try to stay away from these days. God, I hate all this AI hardware stuff. I would want to quickly wrap this up. I promise to be back again probably on Sunday when we'll have like another Mark Gurman report. I also want to get like really, really comfortable with my new tech setup. You saw me have some issues again today, but at least we have now like a working like model of how it's supposed to work. And I also previously fixed it working with like YouTube videos, so I will be able to do reaction stuff again. And by the beginning of next week, you can basically expect me to be back at full force. Then the week after, we actually get WWDC, so I will definitely be reacting to that and then providing follow-up content, but it might be a little slower because I have to work a lot that week. So I want to thank you, anyone who joined despite all the technical issues. Thank you for pointing out that there were technical issues. I will keep on improving. I will keep getting used to new tech. For everyone watching, please consider subscribing the video, liking it, sharing it, commenting on it. And if you want to support this channel directly, you can send a super chat, a super sticker, or you can subscribe to my Patreon, the link of which you can find in the description of this channel. Thank you so much. Let me know what you would like to see me react to or comment on next time. This is Mark Tech, tuning out.